Welcome to the SIWIKE podcast, the only podcast that shares the stuff you didn't know you needed to know about jobs, careers, and life. The SIWIKE podcast, the stuff I wish I knew earlier.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the SIWIKE Stuff I Wish I Knew Earlier podcast. We're here with one of our new guest hosts, Brian Lau, and he comes to us with a background in consulting and strategy and a little bit of business and a whole bunch of other stuff mixed in. So, Brian, if you can share a little bit about what you're doing now, and then we'll go back in time with what you were like as a kid. So what are you up to these days, Brian?
Sure. Hey, Luki, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me. What I'm doing now, I currently live in the Bay Area. I grew up in Toronto, and so I'm working at HP. And I'm a part of the future of work team. And I'm product manager, focused on strategy and product. And a lot of the work that I'm doing is really thinking about evaluating new concepts and ideas, given, a lot of the change that's happening in the world. Many companies are always constantly thinking about, what things that you get involved with, and what I work with teams, engineering teams, a lot of broad range of teams to figure out where HP should go in terms of offering specifically around the future of work. And it's a big topic to many different people.
Sounds good. And that's the San Francisco Bay Area, not the Toronto Bay Area.
Yeah, San Francisco Bay Area.
Down in the US.
In Silicon Valley, that's right.
Perfect. So if we rewind and go back in time and ask, like, what was Brian like as a kid? So were you always interested in strategy and innovation and things like that, or did you have like a slightly different childhood? So what was Brian like as a kid? Early fond memories? Any of those that you could share?
Yeah. If I'm honest, probably wasn't thinking of pursuing strategy and product when I was younger. Believe it or not, I was actually a really shy kid growing up. Generally, a lot of my family is, and no surprise, I was also. Was scared to talk to adults, scared to talk to others in general. But that I eventually grew out of it, coming out of my shell, and I'll get to that in a bit. But I was a curious kid, if I remember that correctly. Always with lots of questions, and generally, as I was growing up, also just as a kid growing up in Scarborough, trying to fit in. Scarborough was a great place to have as a kid from Chinese heritage, and growing up in Canada was a great place to do that and find your way. But I came out of my shell a little bit, probably closer to middle school. My mom put me in one of these like leadership camps with with the city of Toronto, and it's like where you get trained to lead summer camps.
Okay.
And so they teach you a lot of like stuff and force you to do a lot of activities. And I think that started getting me out of my comfort zone, but really kind of taught me a lot of skills that it was kind of a journey from there to make it more comfortable to do these things.
Can you recall one of the most memorable or interesting or maybe nerve-wracking examples of uncomfortable and out of your shell that you can remember in that camp?
Yeah, you know what? Similar to the camping. So the camp was a start. And then as I always swam as a kid as well. My brother and I, we were put in swimming lessons. And it's funny, my mom was always like, we'll put you in activities. But as we got older, she was like, okay, we're going to keep you in activities that at least you can make money for yourself when you need to. So like, we're going to keep you in swimming. So I was a lifeguard and a swimming instructor, gradually kind of migrated to that for my first role. And I do remember the first time I completed a similar course to teach. Having to teach my first class was actually super nerve-wracking. And I remember I was teaching probably 7 or 8 year olds, and I was probably way more nervous than the 7 because I had to tell them what to do. And I don't know what's in my head now, but I remember being super, super nervous, constantly looking at my notes, telling them to swim across to the other side. And every time I asked them to do something, they would just do it. And eventually I realized, you know what? It's not that bad.
So just kind of getting over that initial hurdle and realizing, a lot of it is just over your head or in your head.
It's in your head. Yeah, absolutely. Like, doing something for the first time or doing something completely out of your comfort zone, we're always our own harshest critic, and we're always worried about what others may think. But oftentimes, if they don't know any better, they're looking to you as the expert. Whatever you tell them likely is probably going to be useful for them because they're there to learn from you.
Yeah, when you have that the clipboard, the whistle, or whatever,
looking very authoritative, which you didn't feel at the time.
Yeah, for sure. So, what were some of the influences along the way? So you're a curious kid, swimming, some leadership stuff, and then how did you ultimately navigate into the area you're in? So there's probably a bunch of steps along the way. What were some of the influences that kind of got you, like parents, family, friends, or different experiences?
Yeah, I think a general theme that kind of overarched my entire kind of life, I guess, and kind of led me, if I were to think about it, to where I am now and where I'm interested in, was my parents were always big proponents of education and learning, and that
Yeah.
was common in the household growing up. There's a lot of Discovery Channel and History Channel playing in the background or whatnot. Watched a lot of documentaries and I watched a lot of Sesame Street stuff like that. I remember when I was younger, would regularly go to the library with my mom, and so tell me to pick books, and she'd send me back if the book wasn't challenging enough. But it was just kind of a thing that was very common. Always wanted to be had the curiosity, I guess, that I was mentioning earlier. And similarly as well, like my dad studied engineering at U of T actually as well, and so it's one of the main reasons why I chose to go there. But over the years, like I just viewed like learning and education as something that nobody can take away from you, and I just kind of continue to kind of keep that in the back of my mind. And I've had a chance to kind of meet folks from all different walks of life, from different backgrounds, whether it's through personal travel or work. And through that, with all the learnings, I've been able to kind of see like success can come in many different ways. And so that's kind of been like big influences on me, kind of like challenging you to think differently on how things can get done, or what's possible, even though in your little bubble growing up, that you may not necessarily think it is.
Sounds good. So you're growing up and then you're in like high school or something, and you have to ultimately pick where you want to go for a college, university. So it seems like that university is always the default path. If your dad works there, you kind of have to go to college or something like that. But how did you kind of navigate your way? Were you pretty good at certain subjects? Did you have other people influencing you along the way? How was that path?
Yeah, my dad, for him studying at U of T, like I think he had always wanted my brother and I to pursue engineering. So growing up, I guess trying to nurturing all the skill sets you might need, and that was a plan for a long time. Even going into high school, like I was interested. I was always kind of grown up and still very interested in cars. So I always thought I'd kind of work in the automotive industry in some sense, maybe be an automotive engineer. But as I was going into high school, kind of getting involved in more activities and thinking through more things, taking different subjects. I found some of the sciences especially challenging.
Okay.
But you can take all the core courses that you would need to kind of go into engineering. But at the same time, I just found myself gravitating to a lot of the business courses that I was taking, and genuinely just thought, there's a decision point where I had to be like, okay, well, I have to think about what do I actually want to do? And looking into university programs when I was looking, it was time to apply, I just found that I resonated with a lot of the business programs. And fortunately for me, my parents have always been supportive in terms of my brother and I picking something that we're interested in versus doing something that they want me to do. And so I'm lucky in that sense. I'm sure my dad was just disappointed at the end. My brother and I neither of us went into engineering, but we're both happy with the paths that we took.
This is younger brother or older brother?
Older brother. He's 3 years older. Yeah.
And he went business as well, so he kind of paved the way.
He actually became an urban planner. And it's funny. Like I joke with him for a long time. We growing up, we played the game SimCity. I don't know if you played it when you're younger, but that was a game that he really loved and really played a lot. And it was almost like a foreshadowing or a hinting that because he loved doing that, he ended up pursuing it, and he's a planner to this day. Yeah.
That's amazing. So what was a conversation like with dad to kind of break the news to him that, sorry, yeah, number one didn't go for the engineering and number two isn't either? Like, did you recall having to do that, or was it just?
Yeah. I mean, I remember a couple of conversations. I think my dad was probably in denial for a while. I think it was kind of just, he didn't, and I respect a lot because he didn't want to influence my decision. Both my parents didn't want to influence our decision, but you can tell they were encouraging, they're, with all the sciences, it's great career paths to take if you go into engineering, which is true. It's not wrong. Definitely learned that, especially being at Deloitte afterwards and working with a bunch of engineers. But they're kind of like, they asked a lot of questions, right? It's like, well, what do you want to do with it? What exactly is interesting to you? And then, made me think, forced me to think about like what I would do with it, and made sure I understood like the career paths that were possible. And I wasn't just kind of being influenced by my friends who were going into the programs or whatnot. And so after having numerous conversations around back and forth, they're like, they came back to that overall theme of saying, hey, if this is something you want to do, you're the one who's going to have to study it. You're the one who's going to have to work the careers, and you're the one who's going to live the life. So we're supportive.
Sounds good. So it sounds like that, yeah, there's a little bit of nudging and maybe a little bit of awe. You sure about that? But
Yeah.
it sounds like that they let you go on your way. So so now
Yeah.
you're in business school, and then you ultimately, well, at some point get into consulting and strategy and tech and stuff like that. But was that on the was that on the radar in first year, like, or were you on the accounting, a lawyer, finance path as most typical business students? What was that kind of journey like?
Yeah, it was quite a journey at UT Scarborough. Like there was a lot of different paths. It's very common in the business program, and as you probably know, a lot of folks like to choose accounting, and I'm not sure that's still to this day, but it was very common. The firms recruited heavily there. And so that was kind of my thought as well, like definitely similar to my parents telling us like how many great opportunities engineers have. Like as I was learning about accounting, there's hearing a lot of firms talk about how great the opportunities were. And so that was a thought at first. But at the same time, as I was taking the courses and as I was going through, I was enjoying like some of the other courses I was taking as well. And I was trying to understand, okay, what else is there to do out there? And I was fortunate to be part of the co-op program. So did have a chance. I did a co-op term in corporate communications. I did a corporate communications term, and I also did one in product marketing. So I got to try different things, which I was kind of interested in, and the roles were interesting at the time. And my parents at the time were saying, if you don't know what you want to do, just try things. And so that was great advice, because at the very least, you'd find out what you don't like. So I just at the time, I think it was that decision point. I'm thinking like I have to commit to an internship and then eventually kind of go to my full-time job. And I was concerned that if I had picked accounting, I wasn't 100% sure if that's what I want to do then. And the path is pretty structured for the CPA CA route, where you have to do all your hours and whatnot. And so a lot of my friends had picked that, and I just wasn't. So something about it just didn't feel like I was ready to kind of commit to that. So I entertained a lot of things. I also had thought about applying to law school, talked to a bunch of lawyers as well to kind of get a sense of what the day in life was like, what the process was. That was very eye-opening. So I was essentially a little lost for the first couple of years. But eventually, it was really funny. Deloitte actually did an info session in my third year, and I think it was the first time they had done a consulting info session on campus, and that was the first time I learned about consulting. And it was, the way it was positioned was you work on a lot of different problems, and you can work across industries, and you can try a lot of different things, and you can learn a lot of different skill sets. And so that's what piqued my interest. Went down a rabbit hole researching, and then started saying, well, maybe I want to try that.
That sounds good. And how was that hiring process? So by that time you're what, third, fourth year? So you have a little bit of runway, or is it just like, no, I'm graduating next month?
It was third year, if I remember correctly, and so it was kind of late already. And I just learned. Think about it. I just learned about it. I didn't even know it existed, embarrassingly. But it was interesting to me. So I started looking around to see, like, even at U of T, is there a way to kind of learn more? And so there actually is like a University of Toronto Consulting Association that was, we were at the Scarborough campus, but it was based out of the downtown campus in St. George. And I decided to apply to be a part of it because they do this kind of volunteer consulting group where you get a chance to kind of be led by a consultant that's kind of like your project leader, and then they kind of mentor you through doing a project for community or organizations. And so it was a great opportunity. Ironically, also someone from Deloitte who is kind of coaching us through it, but it kind of solidified my interest to kind of do the kind of work that was being done. I'd applied like most folks will do for their regular campus recruitment. I didn't get in. It was, I remember that it was disappointing, where I was hoping. I graduated off stream. I took a summer off. I had to kind of backpack a little bit, so I kind of graduated off stream. So the recruiting was a little off, and so I just ended up talking to as many companies as I could, research, all the different firms out there, and kind of did cold calling and cold emailing and resumes, and had a couple of interviews, and eventually. I was between two firms, and one of them being Deloitte, and I ended up taking an offer at Deloitte, but it was for a different role. They had called me back for a different role, and it was in their kind of working for the chief information officer in the project management office, and doing a bit of IT strategy work. So started off there, and ended up kind of doing a whole bunch of different roles at the firm over the next decade.
Cool. So what I took from that is take some time over the summer and take it off, because that's probably one of the few times that you actually get to do that. So for those that are in that situation, if they have that luxury, obviously it's not necessarily available for everyone, but if you can, it sounded like that would probably be a good experience, and maybe we'll dig into that in a future episode. And then afterwards, like the kind of hustling and cold calling, networking, it sounds like that was kind of one of your keys to landing two offers, and then ultimately choosing one of them. So it sounds like that was the path, and then we'll probably go to that in a few minutes. Does that sound about right, or are there other things?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think for me, because I'm in the co-op program, and for those who aren't familiar, you're generally giving up your summers to kind of do job search and to kind of they help you find internship programs. And because I was knowing that, I was like, well, you're either work or study. And I was thinking, like, from my university experience, I was like, there's a couple of other things that I wanted to do as well. And talk to folks. I did talk to folks that took time off. I know in the UK it's very common, or in Europe, to take gap years and kind of to do things, to backpack, to travel, or to do something else, to start your own business. And so I thought, there wasn't a lot of course selection for the particular summer that I wanted to go into, and realized that, well, if there's the course selections that I want to take aren't there, why not just take the summer off? I was a little nervous because it would mean I would graduate one term later. Okay. And I was worried about the kind of job search process. But at the same time, I was like, this is a decision that I will regret it if I didn't take the time for myself. And I made the most of that summer. I studied French in Quebec for a while. I did a bit of backpacking across Europe, and I wouldn't change it for the world. So that was kind of like one of these decisions where I was like, I won't regret it, or will you regret it? And I think I made the right choice.
Sounds good. So you landed an offer at Deloitte, you ultimately started, and then what was your career path like there? What did you like? We'll maybe leave out the parts you didn't like as much, or for each episode. But what was that path? And then ultimately you're in HP in San Fran. So what was that trajectory like?
Yeah, once I got to the firm, it was admittedly at the time, like, it was my top firm. I met a bunch of folks at Deloitte, and I really wanted to kind of get in there. And so I ultimately accepted the offer because I enjoyed kind of my interactions with folks and what I was learning from people. And I did have the goal to learn as much as I could. Same thing growing up. So I got in there and was able to kind of do some kind of IT strategy for about a year and a half. Got an opportunity to do some large-scale transformation work at Deloitte Canada afterwards, ironically, with a whole bunch of consultants on the project at the time. And after that program, had the opportunity to transfer to consulting, because I had worked with the folks that were on the project for about 2 years. And after getting to consulting, did that for on and off probably like 4 or 5 additional years before another inflection point of thinking about whether I wanted to go back to school, which may be another conversation. But I was fortunate that every couple of years there were kind of amazing opportunities that were presented themselves at the firm, and that's one of the things that kept me at Deloitte for so long. Because even though I was at the firm, I felt like I had multiple different jobs, and I always said I'd stay until there was something else that came up, or I'd continue looking for the next opportunity within the firm. And so did consulting for a number of years, projects across strategy, operations, technology. It was super interesting, learned so much. Had the opportunity to decide to go back to grad school, had to decide whether I wanted to go back to grad school. And after some decision, also similarly around the regret, because I'd been interested to go back to grad school, but I kind of put it off for a little bit because I was enjoying what I was doing at work. But decided to make that decision, came back, had an opportunity to do more roles within the firm. I did a chief of staff role for a senior leader at Deloitte. I worked for Deloitte University, our leadership development center. So also like just a handful of all the roles that I got to do while I was at the firm before having the opportunity from a personal decision. My partner is down here, and got married and decided to figure out, like, are we going to live in Toronto for a bit? Or are we going to live in the Bay Area for a bit? And spend some time in Toronto, and then decided to spend some time down here.
Cool. So it sounds like a whirlwind of activity that probably need a couple of episodes to dive into that. But what I took from that is lots of great experience moving around in a firm. Ultimately, there was a need or want to do some extra education. So MBA felt like that whole kind of regret decision again. Let's do it. And I assume the firm paid for most of it or all of it.
Yeah, I was fortunate that a lot of the firms have a sponsorship program that will allow some of their consultants to go back to school go to certain schools on a list. And so I was able to take part of that at Deloitte. was able to do that, come back, and also kind of continue accelerate my career. But with the personal choices, I was looking, maybe I'll work with Deloitte US. And so what was interesting was explored a bunch of different roles. I'd done, like, the chief of staff role I'd done was global, so I had an opportunity to kind of travel back when travel was more of a thing, around to different parts of the world during that time. And so it was really interesting. I was looking to kind of relocate to the US. But during the pandemic, it made things a little trickier.
Sure.
So there was a decision point around what roles were available to me at the firm. And while I had relocated geographically to the SF Bay Area in the heart of Silicon Valley, really trying to think through what else opportunities were there. And so there's some amazing opportunities that come up, and I had difficult decisions to make at that point as well.
Sounds good. So ultimately you landed a role at HP, and now you're in your current role. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of that journey to land that, and how you ended up doing what you're doing now?
Yeah. So this was during the pandemic, so this is several years ago, and I was thinking about, I had some conversations with folks at Deloitte in the US, and there was a couple of interesting roles that I was kind of interviewing with, trying to find my right fit at the firm. But at the same time, during that time, a lot of other tech companies had kind of reached out, and then I met some folks even through the U of T network, just trying to learn the landscape down here, what it was like, and where some of the companies are located, and had lots of coffee conversations to kind of learn about what's out there. And so essentially, just through conversations and opportunities, I did a bunch of interviews, didn't land a bunch of jobs, but was really trying to think about, as I was interviewing myself for a job, also interviewing the company to find out if that was a good fit. Because I had been with Deloitte for so long, and I was used to a certain culture and certain opportunities, and so really trying to find my fit somewhere else. And lucky for me, there was a product management role that kind of fit with me around the future of work, which I've done some future work efforts back when I was with Deloitte, that it just seemed like a good fit for my experience, what they were looking for, the team that I met. Many interviews later, I had to make the decision whether or not I was going to join it, and I think it was the right decision.
Sounds good. So it sounds like there's going to be a lot more growth and different things on the horizon. So yeah, lots to look forward to. If you're to be able to go back and give young Brian different pieces of SWIKE, the stuff I wish I knew earlier. I don't know if it's in elementary, high school, university, or during work. What are some of the pieces of advice you give yourself?
Yeah. I think one of the big ones I'd tell my real younger self is, like, don't be so hard on yourself, because I guess being shy, I was always afraid of, like, I guess maybe what people thought. And so maybe being self-conscious about that stuff growing up. And so that was, eventually had an opportunity to overcome it. But that was one of the things I would tell my real younger self. I think generally, couple of things that I would kind of think about, and I think it holds true even today. I would tell myself today, and hopefully I will remind myself every day going forward. But, like, you don't need to know all the answers to things you're trying to figure out or wanting to do, or, like, even around your career or personal life. You just have to have an idea of what you like, what you don't like, and then test your hypothesis. I think I want to do this, or I think I'd be interested in this. And then if you don't like it, that's great. Now you have a data point that you don't want to do this. That's kind of a really one, and hopefully it kind of encourages young me to kind of move forward and take more chances. But talking to people also really helped. I've talked to you before in the past, shared about things that we're interested in, things we're not, at the firm, outside of the firm, hear their stories, find out what people have done. And oftentimes people are like, oh, I know someone who's done that. And then you'd be surprised how small the world is, getting connected and finding mentorship for folks who probably have taken that path you've been taken for. So, having that conversation, talking to people, sharing as well. And I think that the last thing I think I'll leave as well is kind of getting outside your comfort zone. I think no matter how much you research a topic, an idea, or watch about it on YouTube or something, sometimes you just have to take a leap and do it. And I find, like, when we're in these uncomfortable positions where you have to do something you've never done before, whether it's teaching a swimming lesson in front of eight-year-olds or doing a presentation in front of executives, these are, like, real growing opportunities. And once you get through them, they're usually not as bad as you think it is, but they're incredible growth milestones.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of good insights in there. And what I took from that is, is that don't be hard on yourself, and then getting out of your comfort zone kind of goes hand in hand, right? Where if you're too shy and self-conscious, then you probably lose out on a whole bunch of opportunities that you could have otherwise.
Absolutely.
Like what if you decide to say yes to that instead of like deciding not to, right? So that is one where it helps to get an understanding of what, like you said, what you don't like just as much as what you do like. So don't be afraid to try. I definitely like you don't need to know all the answers, because too many people only do something when they're ready, right? Well, yeah, and sometimes ready is all dependent, right? It's not necessarily that you know everything. It could be just like a feeling or a sentiment, versus having the entire knowledge and expertise to be able to do that. And definitely we've connected a lot on the whole talking to people, the whole mentorship and sharing. Like somebody's done that already. Like don't reinvent the wheel. Just ask someone else. And sometimes nobody's really done it, or you can piece together the stories of 3 or 4 people and then carve out your own path. And when they did it, it was a different world, a different set of circumstances, but at least you can kind of extrapolate from all that. So I think that's right. A lot of amazing work. So thanks so much, Brian, for sharing. I would love to hear a little bit more. I don't know if you have some future aspirations that you're looking forward to, and maybe if you're willing to have people to connect with you, like where can they find out about you? So what are some aspirations that you have upcoming?
Yeah, great question, and I'm still trying to figure that out. taking the same approaches I'm telling my younger self and now my older self as well. But I'm really enjoying the work I'm doing right now. You did a great recap earlier of kind of what I'm thinking about, but the whole future work bit, especially in tech as I'm working in it right now, that not having the answer, I have to embrace that, because we're in this time where we're not actually sure where everything is changing. And so it doesn't mean you don't do anything. You can't wait till everything shakes out before you actually start deciding where you want to go. So iterating, having a hypothesis, and taking a chance, talking to people, whether it's talking to other companies or whether it's talking to experts, it plays a lot. All of those things play into what I'm doing currently right now. So in this future work role, I'm really enjoying it. Education, I mentioned, has always been really, really near and dear to me as well. And so I work closely with our future of education team as well here at HP. And so really trying to think through from a societal impact perspective, not just the future work, but how, the future of learning, the future of kind of career prep, and what careers will exist moving forward, and what technology we will need. And thinking of from a whole broader impact is kind of where I want to have my focus over the next little bit. And I think the role that I have right now is like well equipped to make me think around it.
Sounds good. It sounds like a lot of interesting areas, and definitely stuff that I'd be interested in learning about more as well. So
absolutely,
thanks so much for sharing that. And if folks are interested to connect with you and learn more, is LinkedIn the best place, or how?
Yeah, LinkedIn would be the best place to reach out and connect. And I'm happy to chat. I've always met great, interesting people.
That's perfect. So thanks so much, Brian, for sharing your story, and hopefully we'll deep dive into some of these other topics that we talked about, and we'll hopefully have you back for a future episode.
Happy to. Thanks for having me, Luki. This was fun.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks for joining us on the SIWIKE Stuff I Wish I Knew Earlier, the podcast. If you like the podcast, please subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you found this podcast. And if you can give us a review, that would be very appreciated. Feel free to contact me on LinkedIn at Luki Danu, LUKIDANU, and the same on most social media platforms. And I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks. Bye.